It's Nelson Valkenburg joining Tim Hauraney and myself, Adam Wylde, nailing the apex. We're race-free, unfortunately. But we do have a rainy Sunday. It would be kind of a fun racing conditions, honestly. Nelson, I'm assuming because you're in the Netherlands, it's usually raining where you are. Is it raining right now as hard as it is here in Toronto?
It's a glorious Sunday. It's a glorious, beautiful blue skies, great sun. It feels like spring has come, but it is quite chilly.
Jealous. Very, very jealous. So let's talk a little bit about this week, okay? Let's talk about the week that was, because I don't understand, and I think the F1 world is sort of shocked that Audi, which is a team that at the end of last year when they were still Sauber, were starting to make some strides towards legitimate points, legitimate racecraft, and obviously the Audi brand coming in, and some great vibes around that team with Jonathan Wheatley at the head of it. He resigns out of nowhere late last week, and everybody assumes that he's going immediately to Aston Martin. Aston Martin's put out a statement. We can park that for now. But let's just start with the shock of Jonathan Wheatley, who's a very positive guy, who's a guy that is really beloved in racing, in Formula One, was beloved at Red Bull before. What happened here, guys? Why did he leave?
I have a feeling that there's some internal politics there between Binotto and Wheatley. I know there was a little bit of jealousy around the Silverstone limelight for Wheatley. Everybody saying that it was the Wheatley effect. But ultimately, it may just be that there's nothing quite like home than like the UK for Wheatley, and that the scope of the challenge, if he goes to Aston Martin, and the salary would make him leave. That is something that could be the carrot in this, but there must also be a little bit of a stick, and I feel that although it was quite positive at Audi, maybe that dynamic didn't work as well as he would have hoped.
I'd heard the same thing, like a lot of back and forth between Binotto and Wheatley, and was a relationship that allegedly wasn't working out very well. But I think, Nelson's also right in saying, maybe heading back to the UK was also something that he might have wanted to do as well. And it's funny with that, that Sauber headquarters in Switzerland, and never sometimes being able to hold on to talent as long as they can, which I always find quite strange, because it should be a pretty beautiful place to live. But
it's a very expensive place to live, I'll tell you that.
Yeah, for sure. But I mean, that being said, at this moment, Adam, there's no confirmation of Jonathan Wheatley going to Aston Martin, at least the time of our recording here on Sunday at 10:13 a.m. Eastern time. But I mean, if there's smoke, there's always some fire, right? That's the thing with Formula One for sure. But at the time of us recording, there is no contract that's been signed between the two parties as of yet.
Or at least it's not been announced.
Yeah. There would be gardening leave anyway, would there not?
I think gardening leave is up to the former employer. It could be that Audi just says, okay, it is of mutual benefit to get this done cleanly, quickly, and Wheatley could start very early on. If the gardening leave is enforced, I believe it could be all the way up to the Dutch Grand Prix until he actually can start there. I would imagine with the swiftness in how Audi has acted around the situation with Wheatley, that there's been discussions there on gardening leave as well. That must have been part of the discussion.
Yeah, and for sure. I think also, Adam, there's it could also be if there are discussions between Aston Martin and Wheatley, maybe there is something in there to help cover off some of the pay that Jonathan might have been owed by Audi as well. So there's always deals inside the deals, so to speak, to try and help cut down whatever the gardening leave could end up being. I assume that if he does end up going to another team, there will be a gardening leave. It just depends on that length. Could be anywhere from 3 to 6 to 12 months. I wouldn't imagine it being that long, to be perfectly honest with you, but it could be something where we don't see Wheatley at another team for at least 3 to 6 months for sure.
I think it's quicker.
And
I think he.
You think it's quicker? Okay.
If he has strategy, yeah, I think it's quicker. I think this is part of some strategy here that they really talked about it really in depth. Aston Martin definitely isn't ready to confirm it, though. That's the other part of this situation. But I cannot imagine him being on the sidelines for 6 months after a job that he held for 15, something like that. So let's wait and see.
So I guess if you're an Audi fan, and listen, there are not, I'm sure there were some, but Sauber wasn't like one of the teams that was one of the most followed teams on the grid, right? Like when we're talking about their history, which is long, they never won a world championship. Obviously, it was always cool that it was, Peter Sauber and it was us against the world. And there were some really good years with the BMW branding and, gave rise to some fantastic drivers that went on to do great things. There's no question. But it's not even a team that I would even put up in the category of like a Williams, which has won multiple championships and has people that are hardcore. Doesn't matter how bad Williams do, I'm still going to be a Williams fan. And they've got this new branding with Audi, and things are looking okay the first couple of races, right? You feel pretty good about this. Obviously, now knowing what we know, this conversation probably started before the season started in terms of his exit. But if you're an Audi fan,
that I don't think so, Adam. That he started.
You don't know
that the conversation started earlier.
Okay, that's interesting.
No, because it feels like from the outside, it feels like Aston Martin was in a bind, a major issue. Who can we get? Who can figure this out first? Because it is clear that Adrian Newey cannot do both jobs, and he may not even be real team principal material. And that discussion suddenly lurched into the direction of Jonathan Wheatley. He may have been approached, and then it all went very quickly. That's how I read the situation on the outside. I don't know how that is for you, Tim.
I think first would love to start with like Audi, and then you'll get Adam to move it into Aston Martin, because I think there's.
I'm holding this back on Aston if I can.
Yeah. For me, they're two kind of separate sort of things, and I can tell folks what I know from the Aston Martin side. So, I think for Audi, Adam, you make some good points when you talk about when they were Sauber and a lot of the drivers that they brought into Formula One and who carried on to have really great success with other teams in Formula One. But I think if you're Audi, it's a big loss if you're losing someone like Jonathan Wheatley. He is very good at what he does, and a big part of what he does is obviously not only on that engineering sort of side of a race team, but also I think more of the collective as a leadership, as a person who gets everyone working together and moving things in the right side, in the right direction when it comes to the trackside leadership. And I think that's something that he's very, very good at. Now, if we go back to, I think it was 2024, when all of the news about Christian Horner, the alleged, those text messages that could have been real, may have been real. Who knows, that we all got during the Bahrain test. And you could kind of see that the team, Red Bull Racing, where Jonathan was at the time, was under a lot of strain because of all of this. You could see that there were people out of place. But I remember Wheatley had a meeting with the entire Red Bull Racing team in lead up to round one, which was the Bahrain Grand Prix. And I remember I was standing out front of the Red Bull Racing hospitality, had everyone around him, and he's getting everybody like motivated and ready to go, and making sure everyone was pulling in the right direction and staying focused. And I think that right there really sums up a lot about what Jonathan Wheatley is just so good with doing, is just getting a team together, getting them going in the right direction, get everyone doing their proper jobs, and keeping everyone inspired and motivated and doing a good job. And so I think if you're Audi, you're coming into Formula One, you're new. This is a new experience for you. The team personnel, this is, there's a lot of pressure on them as well, because you have such a big manufacturer coming in to work at your team. I think losing someone like that who can keep everyone together, I think that's a huge blow to this team. And who's to say that Mattia Binotto can handle that side of the responsibilities. We know that Mattia Binotto is really great when it comes to the technical side of things, but let's see what happens now that Mattia Binotto is taking over that team principal role for the time being at Audi. Let's see if he can get this team, going in the right direction. Because Adam, you made a great point. Audi has done quite decently to start this season. I mean, obviously they've had some DNFs, and the car is a bit overweight, and they're struggling with the power unit a tiny bit. But for a team that's brand new to the grid, I think they've done quite decently so far.
The thing is, Wheatley is such a people person, as Tim says, and the race team itself has been really a happy place under Wheatley. That's been clear. When you go into the paddock, and Tim will probably feel the same thing, that team, from being a little bit rudderless, has felt like driven with a purpose. It started with an upgrade in 24 that was led by Binotto. So Binotto is very instrumental in this team's rise last year as well. But from a people point of view, Wheatley is really a good manager, and it will be a loss to this team. They lost Seidel early on in their project. Wheatley came in to replace him in the hierarchy, and now they lose him as well. I'm not entirely certain what Audi is going to do about this. How do you soften that blow? Who do you put in place there? But for Wheatley to go within a year, basically, of starting there, it just feels as a massive, massive problem for Audi.
If we were to take a guess as to who they actually could put in there as a team principal, because I really don't think I don't think Binotto can handle not only what he's doing currently, which is a lot, and then also have responsibilities of a team principal on his shoulders as well. I mean, there are some names that are floating around there, but when I take a look at who's really involved in this team as well, especially on the driver development side of things, is Alan McNish. And
yes.
If anybody, I would look at, or I would at least have a conversation with Alan McNish. Alan McNish, 24 Hours of Le Mans winner, former F1 driver for Toyota, ran the Audi Abt Schaeffler team at Formula E. Like, he does have a lot of experience and knowledge in motorsports. And honestly, it would only make sense to me if they tapped him on the shoulder to move into a team principal position. At this moment, I don't know if there's those conversations that are happening, but I do know Alan has been around the team quite a bit over the last few races, that's for sure.
He feels far more integrated at the back end of last year and the start of this year than he was before. He obviously leads the Audi Junior program, but this is a guy who understands the sport, is also a people person, let's not forget, and is there. He's always there. He's there early in the morning, he's there in the evening, and he's not just looking at an F2 driver that he's working with, he's within this team. Feels a little bit, in that respect, like Pedro de la Rosa at Aston Martin. Yeah. And it's a very good shout by Tim. I think Alan McNish would be the most logical one to follow in Wheatley's footsteps, simply because he has the gravitas, the people skills, and the knowledge to do it.
Can I ask, let's say you're the owner of Audi, you guys own the brand, the two of you, okay? And you're like, wow, we've just invested in this F1 team over the last 3 years to varying degrees, and now basically outright own it. I got two guys that I really trusted my program with, Wheatley and Binotto, and I can only keep one. Who was more important to the Audi program, not just in the past, not just today, but going forward, coming into this season?
Oh, I would arguably say Binotto, because if you have your ducks in a row, technically, running a race team becomes far easier. I would say Binotto, also because he has experience of running a team. So having someone very high up in the ladder that understands the challenges that a team faces on the ground is very important. But ideally, you have two positions well placed.
Yeah, I definitely agree with Nelson. I mean, I think when you look at Binotto's track record, I mean, working at Ferrari for most of his career, pretty much all of it almost, and then moving into a team principal role at the Scuderia, trying to run that whole organization. I mean, that's a lot of experience right there that you're moving into another very technical and skilled leadership role, trying to bring a manufacturer like Audi into the sport, get them settled in and get them ready for Grand Prix racing. I really think that Binotto definitely is at the top of that pyramid, and then you kind of need someone who can help with that trackside leadership, steer the ship, put people in the right places of where they're going to be successful during race weekends. That's a guy like Jonathan Wheatley. That's sort of what he was. That's sort of his position, right? That's what he was sort of doing. But Nelson makes a great point. You know, when things technically behind the scenes are sound and you're getting the right components to the car when they need to be there and the car going in the right direction, that makes everything so much easier.
Absolutely. Okay. Well, I just, because it's from an outsider's perspective, which I undoubtedly am. You know, you look at a guy like Mattia Binotto, and then you look at a guy like Jonathan Wheatley. Jonathan Wheatley just seems like a ray of sunshine. Now, I know that there's probably times where he's upset, but when he's in front of the camera, when he seems to be talking to his team, there's a guy that seems like he actively chooses to be in a good mood. And my impression of Mattia Binotto might not be accurate, because my last impression of him was when Ferrari were throwing races that perhaps they shouldn't have. You know, thinking about Monaco, I think 2024, some of the strategy issues that they went through. And he doesn't have the reputation as maybe, I guess in doctor's terms, like the bedside manner with the drivers and perhaps the team. I know he's the technical head, but obviously that's a huge part. Is that true?
I think he's more personable than that. But as someone who is he's very technical, he's very, very clever, and not everybody's built for the limelight in the same way. It was clear that Jonathan Wheatley was ready to step into the limelight after years of diligent service at Red Bull. We didn't know if he'd be really good in front of a camera, but he is. But I think it's the biggest what if in the career of Binotto if they had put Vasseur next to Binotto and kept Binotto on in terms of technical leadership, basically in a similar situation as with Audi and whoever runs the race team. If they'd done that, I think Binotto would have come out of the Ferrari period unscathed, or far less skated than he was. But I think he is one of those people that is not in F1 to be famous, and doesn't need to see himself plastered on every newspaper. On the other hand, we did hear that there was some contention that Wheatley took too much of the spotlight. So he is only human, but he's not the greatest at the media part. And that's why, as Tim says, Alan McNish would be a great shout, because he'll do that quite happily. He'll take the heat where necessary. You need to be happy to do media to be in a team principal role. So yeah, for me, I can understand that would work, but I wouldn't discount Binotto as a very good manager in this situation as well.
I want to bring up, gentlemen, the Aston Martin statement on Friday, and that's why I've just reached for my phone here. And it was just entitled, An Update from Lawrence Stroll, and here we go. With the current speculation surrounding Adrian Newey's role on our team, and obviously if you don't know, Adrian Newey is the team principal, I want to take this opportunity to set the record straight. As executive chairman and controlling shareholder, I would like to reaffirm that Adrian Newey is my partner and an important shareholder. He is Aston Martin Racing's managing technical partner, and he and I have a true partnership built on a shared vision of success for the company. We do things differently here. And while we don't currently adopt the traditional team principal role that you might see elsewhere, it is by design. As the most successful engineer in the history of the sport, Adrian's primary focus is on the strategic technical leadership where he excels. He is supported by highly skilled senior leadership to deliver on all aspects of the business, both on campus and trackside. We are regularly approached by senior executives from other teams, I thought this was interesting, who wish to join Aston Martin or Aramco, but in keeping with our policy, we do not comment on rumor and speculation. So the insinuation was, well, I mean, if Wheatley was even going to be considered, he approached us. It wasn't, we didn't go to him. I want to unpack that statement.
So weird, this statement.
Do we believe any of that? Is it corporate speak? Like, what are we to take from that?
Well, Tim.
Well, I mean, look, it depends where, we want to start with this, whole story and can kind of tell you the things that, I know and have come to understand over, the last few months, because this is dating back to actually probably around my birthday, around November 26th. When Andy Cowell stepped down as team principal and Adrian Newey moved into the role itself. Now, Andy wasn't just stepping down for the sake of, stepping down, or the reason that him and Newey just didn't get along. I think there were some reports that were floating around that they weren't getting along. I mean, I don't know if you can mix getting along with Cowell basically saying it's best that you have someone else in this role because this engine project needs a lot of help. Mm-hmm. And then going to Japan like he had done, and being over in Japan still is, from my understanding, working with Honda, working with Valvoline, working with Aramco, trying to get the engine project up and running. And for Newey, I think from his side, taking over the team principal role, and this is how I understood it at the time, is that they couldn't find anybody who was the right fit that they wanted in that role, or that Newey wanted in that role. So I think he just decided to take it over for himself until they actually found someone who was a suitable replacement. Now, there was a lot of communications that did come out that didn't say that, Adrian was an interim team principal, which they probably should have, which I think is a miss for the team. But I think at the same time, I had said on SportsCenter, we talked about it on here, Adam. I even said, this isn't a role that Adrian's probably going to be in for a super long time. This is just something he's filling in for the time being until they find someone. At the time, there were a ton of names that were flying around. I mean, Andreas Seidel was one of them. That was back in November. His name was flying around as a potential team principal for Aston Martin for the future. And another one was Jean-Pierre Lambiase, but that I think was something that was happened before November. And so I think now when we take a look at where the team is, and I think Newey understanding this project needs way more work behind the scenes and I don't think he has the time to be a full-on team principal with, doing all the media, doing what a team principal's job, entails as well. And over the past few weeks, there have been discussions with other potential, team principals, but from sources that have told me, they haven't settled on anybody just yet. And Newey may still be in this team principal role for a while.
It's interesting that Andreas Seidel's name resurfaced late last week from some contacts that I have within the team, that he was being mentioned. I have some doubts whether or not he is the right guy for the job at this point. But let's just say that if they get Wheatley and there is a gardening leave attached to that, it is another one of those signings where they will have to wait a long time for things to get going. It was the same with Newey. It was the same with the engineer that came from Ferrari. The whole tug of war of starting early there. And when does this team fire on all cylinders, literally and figuratively? Is it's a big problem. If they can get Wheatley, if they want to get Wheatley, then he has to be able to start now, because the work is so all encompassing, and the job list is probably as long as Adrian Newey's wish list. So there's so much to do.
Yeah, there is. I think that relationship between whoever becomes the team principal and Adrian Newey. I mean, Newey has to be one of the individuals who has to sign off on this as well, Adam. I mean, whoever is going to be the team principal, whoever that may be, and it could very well be Jonathan Wheatley. I mean, it might be. They have to work well together. I mean, and whoever is the team principal has to be cool with understanding that they are going to be reporting to Adrian Newey. That will be the structure.
Do you think he would be, Tim?
Oh, Wheatley would be for sure. I mean, because the two of them have worked together at Red Bull Racing for a really long time, and they do actually have from my understanding, they have a very good relationship. And I think that is someone who Adrian would like to work with. But again, whoever it's going to be, they have to work well with Adrian, because Adrian's going to be at the top of the pyramid, so to speak. And there were a lot of reports that were flying around. I think it was last Thursday that Adrian was stepping down and away from the team. Some reports had said. I mean, he's a managing shareholder of the team. Like he owns a massive amount of shares in this team. He's not going to just pick that up and walk away and leave. Like there's just no way.
Also, Newey wanted this so badly, to be in charge of an F1 team, like
yes,
to really have the opportunity to completely mold it into his image. And it's very early days in what Newey's been able to accomplish at Aston. So for him to walk away now, after making the commitment in the first place, would just not feel logical to me at all. But I agree with Tim. Wheatley would probably have both the experience and the demeanor to be able to forge another good relationship with Newey. So it would make sense for sure. But I think we all in the paddock are looking for why has he left Audi? If he starts immediately at Aston or in 3 months, that's the question. What made him leave? Is it something that Aston can offer him? Is there something that he sees in the Aston Martin project that he hasn't seen at Audi, or is it something else? That will be a fundamental question also to him if he goes to Aston Martin, succeeding at Aston Martin. And we don't have the answers to that.
And yeah, and let's be clear about what Aston Martin needs. It's trackside leadership. It's exactly what they need, right? They definitely need trackside leadership. They need someone who's going to be at all the races, who knows how to run a race team from the racetrack, who knows how to inspire, get people going, knowing where everybody works best within inside that trackside space. And that is what they need. And Jonathan Wheatley is an individual who can fill that need. There is no question about that.
And not only that, what Aston has lacked has a connection between the factory and the race team, whether it's updates not working or the sweet spot in terms of a setup not being found. It's like two different worlds that aren't communicating well. And if Wheatley is able to communicate well with Newey, the bridging of that gap is fundamental for Aston Martin realizing the potential that they have.
So, and they do have enormous potential. They've got beautiful facilities. They've got the smartest engineer in the sport's history. They have had a lot of change, though. And when you see teams going through a lot of change over multiple years, you can see the chaos that it can, the havoc it can create, right? Because, these cars aren't developed on a week by week basis. It's years. It's 18 months to 2 years to really, truly implement changes, see legitimate growth. Like it's significant. I wonder at this, and maybe this is an unfair question, but I'm going to ask it anyway, guys. Would Aston Martin have been just better to remain a Mercedes team and just go with whatever Mercedes gave them rather than go their own way in the long term?
Yes, for sure. I don't believe the way the Honda deal is set up with the level of commitment laid on from Honda, that in this environment with the opposition they're up against, getting a head start, that it can succeed. I don't believe it. And there are problems with going it alone with Honda. One is a lack of development rate in terms of you have no data from other teams, but the bigger problem is the gearbox. The fact that they have had to build a gearbox from scratch, which they would not have had to do for Mercedes. McLaren showed us that you can win with a customer package. And there is nothing in me that said that they couldn't have done so had they gotten all of their ducks in order. But right now, it's just too many challenges. And I feel that is insurmountable at this point.
I think there's also something to be said in terms of where you want your team's future to go. I think at some points, you really if we look at like Red Bull Racing, the direction they've decided to take by building their own power units in conjunction with Ford, they're not handcuffed to any one singular OEM, right? Like if, let's say one day Ford decides, all right, we're done with F1 and we're gonna, we've had fun, we had a lot of success, and we're leaving now. Red Bull's going to be fine because they're going to be able to pick up where Ford left off and to build the rest of the components that they need for whatever power unit does end up coming down the pipeline later on in the future. If you're Mercedes, now, again, I don't have any inkling Mercedes would ever leave Formula One because they've had so much success there. But if they ended up leaving, I mean, you're Aston Martin and you're with Mercedes at that time, and you're kind of screwed. You don't have anyone who can take on a power unit. But then again, you look at where they are right now when they try to build their own gearbox, which I think is one of those fundamental steps as a team that wants to be like one of those like big three, right? Like Mercedes, Ferrari, and now Red Bull Racing, building your own sort of stuff, right? Like you want to be able to have your own, you want to be able to make sure you can build your own IP, you can hold on to that, and you're not going to run into any problems when, a manufacturer wants to pull out. So where do they go from there when it comes to this Honda situation? I think at the time you want to bring Honda on, obviously for the money that they can bring into the team. I think the funding that they can put into their own engine development program. And then outside of that, if you're Aston Martin, you want to build everything else around that so you can be a sustainable team, building your own stuff and going in your own direction, because they were taking Mercedes components at them. They, like you had said, they were taking the gearbox, they were taking the rear end. So it's like you want to start building your own things so you can be one of those proper big teams. Obviously, if they took a Mercedes power unit for this year, obviously they're in a way better position than what they're in now. But I think if Honda can stick it out, I mean, that is a power unit engine provider that has always had success in Formula One, has always been able to figure it out, and has always been able to come back even stronger. So if they're able to have a little patience, I'm sure this is a project that will pay off eventually. Probably not, obviously not this year.
Yeah.
Could be hard for them next year as well, but in year like 2028, 2029, let's have this conversation then, because we'll see what Honda's been able to do at that point. I see Nelson's shaking his head.
I don't believe it. I don't believe that there's the depth of talent at this point. And also the regulations are stacked against them because they can't spend their way out of this.
Right.
There is a budget cap on engine development as well. And you're up against...
Well, that's not till next season, though.
True, but then Mercedes and Ferrari will have such a head start with teams that are running on all cylinders.
Well, it depends about the Adrian too, right?
Yes, but no, I don't believe it. I don't believe it. And I'm gonna hypothesize here. I'm gonna go way off base here.
Do it.
And there is nothing. There is one name that keeps ringing in my head when I see the struggles at Aston Martin, and that's Build Your Dreams, BYD. We keep hearing, and we heard it again over the Shanghai weekend, that the Chinese OEM, Build Your Dreams, is looking for a way into Formula One. Mm-hmm. Now, Build Your Dreams is right now the premier builder of EVs, but also plug-in hybrids. So it would fit their narrative. Formula One is looking for a way to crack the Chinese market open even further, because we now know that you can't grow further in the Middle East without being exposed. There is a problem there as well. Build Your Dreams is active. What we hear, they were actively thinking about a hypercar project, but they have seemed to have shifted their attention to Formula One. If you're Lance Stroll and you're listening to this, if you're Lawrence Stroll and you're listening to this podcast and you hear Tim say, well, potentially by 28 or 29, it will pay dividends. If you're a businessman like Lawrence Stroll and you've put in so much money, but you stand to gain so much for selling a majority share or even a minority share to build your dreams. And that team switches identity, but also switches engines, because Build Your Dreams BYD is an integral partner to Audi.
Yep.
They supply Audi's batteries for all their EV projects. Ironically, this team's future, and I'm projecting here, but what would be probably best is for them to work with Audi and have like a dual push with Audi with their gearbox. F1 would like it if another team ran an Audi, and really go for it there. But that would mean untangling a situation with Honda that is difficult to untangle. But I am not brave enough to bet in the current climate on Honda being able to get on level pegging with Mercedes and Ferrari over the next 2 or 3 years. And then you start to think, I've invested so much, but I can make a killing on it if I sell it now, or a part of it now. And there are few big names that can take such a project on, and BYD is one of them. And I keep hearing that name being mentioned. Dorilton is the other one. The owners at Williams, they could stand to make a killing if they sell it to BYD. But that the Chinese are looking for a way into F1 is clear. And yeah, I see so many problems with the Aston Martin Honda relationship that is fraught, by the way, after Melbourne most of all. That could be the way to go, but I have no indication from Aston Martin that is happening. But that's what I would do.
Interesting.
Well, if I mean, Adam, do you think the Toronto Maple Leafs are worth more now, or would they be worth more when they win a Stanley Cup?
They'd be worth more when they win a Stanley Cup, but I think the allure of being the owner that gets to get them a Stanley Cup is part of the sales pitch, right? Because here's the thing: when you sell a franchise that's just won a championship, right? You know what the cap of that franchise is. You kind of know, well, that's the amount that it's worth. Before they win a championship, if they're a heritage brand like a Williams, it's like, well, we don't know what it'll look like when they win a championship. So you're sort of selling a little bit of that hope of, look at how much value there still is to be realized from a business point of view. And so, yes, you can probably sell somebody easily on a championship winning team. I do think there's some value in going, but hey, look at what you could do with this, right? That would be the pitch that I would go for if I was going to sell that. Now, I'm curious about, because BYD, by the way, just allowed into the Canadian market. When I was in the Netherlands this past summer, I saw it everywhere. They look like beautiful cars. I know there's some potential privacy issues with them, or at least in North America, there seems to be people are concerned about privacy or whatever. But that's a side point. I'm curious about how quickly a company like that could come in and be an effective engine provider should they arrive, or
they
no.
don't have to. They don't have to be.
That
strategically, you just align with another of the power unit providers.
Okay.
And if you look at it on the face of it, Audi would fit that bill really well, because they are already their main partner in building for Audi the EV parts. That's what BYD does for them, especially for the Chinese market, but they're branching out. So I think there's a danger in glorifying it, doing it all alone, because you're going up against so much. And look at what McLaren has done. They found a hybrid model. They have the Mercedes, but everything else, including the gearbox, they built themselves. So there is a hybrid model there that has given McLaren a world championship last year. Mm-hmm. But F1 is different than probably league sports in that way, that there are only few teams that legitimately over the next 3 years can call themselves championship contenders. And it doesn't matter what you do to a Williams and Audi. It is so difficult to steer a ship from the midfield all the way to the front.
Yeah.
Which team has done that in the last? Well, exactly. But McLaren had a lot of the tools and the right people in place that weren't used. Mm-hmm. And you can't if there's anything we've learned from the Aston Martin project, is you can't spend your way to the top. It just doesn't work.
Right.
It is almost the black magic of F1 on how to build a winning team. And it is not, you cannot replicate it from team to team to team. It is incredible that Toto Wolff has been able to guide the team back to where it is right now. Mm-hmm. But they couldn't, if the regulation set of last year would have been there, it still would have been third, because that set of circumstances they couldn't get on top of.
Right.
So it is, I think the bigger question, if you want to sell a team right now, is what is F1 worth now as a sport, and what will it be worth in 3 years? The time to sell may be now. And that's different than a franchise situation.
Right. Well, we'll see. I want to ask a couple other names, and then we're going to go to Max Verstappen and his race this weekend. Just to get it off, this has not been rumored, but because he's out there, because he's such a huge name, there's no connection between Christian Horner and Audi or Aston Martin. Is that correct?
Well, he's been named everywhere. Let's just say the most logical route for Christian Horner would have been Alpine. Tim, what do you think? But now, with Toto Wolff trying to scupper that deal, it becomes more difficult.
Yeah, it definitely does become harder for Christian to get back into the paddock. I mean, the stuff was happening at Aston Martin. I'm not really too sure I could see Christian Horner there. You have to remember he would be working underneath, Adrian Newey, and he would have to report to Newey. Would he even want to do that? Right? Like that was a relationship that used to be the other way around. Mm-hmm. And so for Christian Horner, he wants to have a lot of the power and not really have to worry about any of the other sort of things like that. I mean,
could see him at Audi.
Yeah, maybe, but could Aston Martin sell him, shares, sell him a bigger piece of the pie at the team? I don't think so. I mean, Aston's already got a lot of shareholders to begin with this race team, so I don't really think there's an option in that respect there either at this moment. It still makes the most sense that Alpine is really the only realistic way. I think that Christian Horner is getting back into Formula One under a massive sort of leadership role where he has definitely more power. But then again, Alpine has to be the one who signs off on that shareholder selling, like who it is actually going to. Like they have that power until I think at least September, if I'm not mistaken. And then whoever owns those shares can make their own decision as to who they want to sell to. The Otro Capital 24% shares in Alpine. So it's a really interesting one. Like, I don't know what Christian Horner has to do behind the scenes to convince Alpine that his shareholder, his consortium group is the right one. And if Toto Wolff is already, selling, if Mercedes is already selling them engines, components, gearbox, rear end, there is already that relationship that is developed there. So, I mean, it could be tough, I think, for Christian Horner to get himself back into like a very, very executive role inside of a team anytime soon. It could be very hard.
Okay. And then the other name, guys, and this name is ubiquitous with Honda for the worst reasons. Fernando Alonso. He's 44. It didn't work out so well when Honda was doing the power units for McLaren. He obviously left that situation, and there was a big public blow-up or a couple of comments one way or the other. I keep looking at Fernando Alonso's career and going, this can't be the way that it ends. And maybe he's able to race next year, but we're talking about timelines with Aston Martin that are far longer than I think Fernando's career, just because of time, will allow. Is there an opportunity or a possibility that if somebody else on the grid struggles, Fernando Alonso transfers to that team for the second half of this year? Is the, it's not been talked about a lot, but you think he stays at Aston Martin?
Yeah.
And I think if his F1 career ends, he still has a few good years and in a prime seat at Le Mans anyway. And that's good enough then at that point for him. I can't see him being happy as a team principal at all. Can you imagine that?
Oh, sorry, not him as a team principal. I'm just talking about him as a driver.
Okay. Oh,
yeah, definitely not as a team principal. My bad. No. Sorry, I should have said that.
Yeah. Tim.
I think for Fernando, I mean, look, he's been pretty open about the fact that definitely the team is struggling, but he has actually put on a pretty brave face about all of it. So far, it's only been 2 races, but he has handled himself really well, I must say. I know Fernando Alonso of old or of the past probably would have lashed out by now. I mean, yeah, he has said some things like the chef in the back could come out and drive these cars, but that was in relation to the regulation. It wasn't in relation to the actual car that Aston Martin has.
Plus, they have a good chef, Tim.
Oh, they do. They actually really do. But I think when it comes down to it, I think Fernando's going to see out the season. I couldn't see him just picking up and quitting. It's not the type of driver that he is. My question more aligns with, could we see him back at Aston Martin next season? You have to remember, like, this could be the last season of Formula One for Fernando Alonso. And does he end up deciding that he wants to retire? Remarkably, for his age, he is still highly regarded on the grid in what could be over like 1 lap raw pace. Like, just take a car for 1 lap and drive the hell out of it and get the time out of it. He can still do that, which is remarkable given his age. And so I think the question comes down to, does Fernando Alonso want to go out like this? Like, is this the way he wants to go out with this season, with this car, in this situation? Or would he like to see what happens with this team for next season and maybe sign a 1-year deal where he does end up retiring at Aston Martin, but the team is in a much better position than if he were to retire at the end of this season? Now, again, I think this is more of a conversation for us to have when we get closer to the end of the season, because I have started to see, as over the last 3 years, I've really noticed with Fernando, when we start getting towards the tail end of the season, the energy level does start to appear to come down. And I think that just has to do with the travel, like just the amount of travel, the time zones, and probably trying to get as best sleep as you can. I mean, Nelson and I know the travel dynamic quite well now, that it is, for us, it can be challenging. I think for an F1 driver who has things a little bit easier with the travel, still quite challenging. So I think, definitely conversation to have when we get closer, like August, September for sure.
Okay.
But something inside me, Adam and Nelson, that just tells me, like, I don't think he wants to go out like this.
And the season is so crappy for Aston Martin that is there anybody knocking on the door there that is better than Fernando to replace him? Because last year we heard, we heard that they were talking to Leclerc, they were talking to Russell, they were talking to Piastri, and they're talking to Verstappen. I can't see any of them thinking, this is a very appealing situation to replace Fernando Alonso at this team in its current state. So if you don't have someone that is provable, a front runner, you're not going to replace him with a Fornaroli, I suppose, current F2 champion, because why would you? You can still use his raw speed, his racecraft, and his experience to your benefit. You'll only replace him with someone that is fundamentally younger and just as good. And I don't think they are moving to Aston anytime soon.
Okay. All right. I just wanted to check in with that because I've been wondering about Fernando and the end of his career, but we've been wondering about that for 10 years and it still hasn't ended. So he's just going to keep going. Now, also happening this weekend, and Nelson, you had the luxury of calling this race, which is so cool. Max Verstappen joined a Mercedes-driven Red Bull branded car, which is sort of funny given all the conversations between Max and Mercedes last year. They won. This is a GT3, and they actually won the race, Nelson, but
then they got disqualified.
Then they got disqualified for using, I think, 7 sets of tires instead of 6. Is that what it was?
Yeah, indeed. It would have been so funny if he had won, and then he would be the F1 driver with the most recent victories in a Ferrari, a Mercedes, and a Red Bull.
Yeah.
But no. The team apparently made a hash of the amount of sets used. Part of the learning curve, I guess, although the team they were using, Windward, is a very renowned team. So there must be some strong conversations there. But leaving that aside, I had a thoroughly enjoyable Saturday. And we are very lucky at VIAPlay to have the rights to both the NLS and the 24-hour series.
I've heard that they just basically dominated the race, guys. Like, it was like Max was phenomenal in this. Do you think, because he's talked about the fact that this Formula One thing, it's not forever, which is such an amazing quote when you think about it, because people are clawing their eyeballs out and mortgaging their future, their family's future, to get to Formula One. And he's like, I'm kind of like been there, done that about it. Do you think that this is a series he would move into later just for the joy of it? Or what do you think he would target next? Because he doesn't seem like the type of guy that would just stop racing.
No.
It feels like he's going to be racing until he's 60.
Well, that I don't know, but F1 is his day job. This is his passion. Running the race team, tackling the really big races, that is part of his passion. He won't move into this full time and let F1 be what it is in his rear view mirror, because he can do both. So for now, I think the next race he's really targeting is the 24 Hours of Daytona, because that fits into a schedule way better than the 24 Hours of Le Mans or the 24 Hours of Spa does. Spa could then be next, but he's building up to, he wants to win them all. Now, that race yesterday, the team dominated, for sure. Verstappen was great, for sure. He took pole position, not by a huge margin. And then the race starts. He leads the first lap and then gets overtaken. And he was not happy. It was Christopher Haase, one of the premier Audi factory drivers, 3-4-time winner of the 24 Hours of the Nürburgring, has won and done it all. A true GT and Nordschleife specialist, armed with an Audi that ran a little bit faster on the main straights. And Max just couldn't hold him off there. But Haase put himself in a position by latching onto the back of Verstappen. Verstappen threw everything in the second lap to get away from the Audi, and he couldn't. And he then spent the remainder of the first stint, 50 minutes or so, behind Haase, trying to find a way past. And Haase was not having it. It took an extraordinary bit of racecraft from Verstappen and a bit of luck, because Haase got held up before the main straight. So that he didn't have the advantage of the main straight speed for Verstappen to get by. By the way, look it up. Look up the highlights from that fight, because... Awesome. But it was a true credit also to Christopher Haase, whose lap times throughout the race were amazing, to show the depth of talent in this field. I know Verstappen rocks up and wins, but there are so many good long-distance drivers that never got the shot at F1. That's why he enjoys it. If he would be 10 seconds quicker, he wouldn't do it, Verstappen. He really needed to pull something special out of the bag to defeat Christopher Haase. And he goes by, and immediately both teams dart into the pit lane because it was their in-lap. But Verstappen refused to come in second, to lose out in that stint. It was one of the better overtakes I've seen in years, and very enjoyable. But the other two drivers, Jules Gounon, great French GT driver, and Dani Juncadella, a Spanish GT driver, that both have won so much. He is crafting a lineup there that can win and most likely will contend for the victory in the 24-hour race because they're all three that good. But at points in the race, Rower Racing, the BMW factory supported team, they had a snipe at the team that could have gotten in front. It wasn't easy for them. At no point were they secure until the final 30 minutes when the race unfolded the way it did. But I think he enjoyed that for sure.
Yeah, yeah. So Nelson sent me the YouTube link for it like a couple days before the race had started because I was wondering where I could go to watch it, and like thankfully like NSL had it on their YouTube channel. It was great. I was like, this is awesome. So obviously I was up watching it. Nelson had mentioned the first stint, and as soon as I saw him get past, I was like, oh yeah, there's no way Verstappen's going out like this. And you could just tell like from the onboard camera and the things that he was doing, you're just like, oh yeah, there's just no way he's gonna settle for second place. Wheel banging just to get the lead
at 300
back.
kph.
Yeah,
It's
like,
but credit to
insane.
Christopher Haase for making it that difficult. I thought we saw one of the best fights.
Yeah, because I went back, like I watched a couple replays of that passing situation, and I was like, I wonder if he had have just when Max moved out to pass or try to pass on the long straight. He was on the left hand. Well, I guess when we're watching it on television, he was on my right hand side, but the driver's left. And as they were going down the straightaway, I was like, I wonder if Haase had just left the car there. Like just didn't, because he did end up like giving him a bit of space, but I wonder if he had just left it there, because then you're going into two separate types of corners where Max, who eventually ended up taking the lead when they were coming up to a left-hander. But if he hadn't have given him room there, Verstappen would have been on the grass. Like he would have had to pull out of the move altogether. But so there was a lot of respect given in that situation when maybe he might not have had to.
If it's the final lap of the 24 hours, Haase doesn't give him the let's say the foot, the 20 centimeters of room. Sure. But he made it as difficult as he fairly could. For sure. But it was clear that Verstappen wasn't having it. So it was great.
But the thing is, Nelson, like I've gone into racing series where I've gone from like a level up to a level down, and you do get treated way differently. Like you are treated like people will then look at you like, oh, this guy was up here and now he's down here with me, and there's no way I'm going to give this guy an easy time or respect. And that has happened a lot. And that does happen in a lot of racing. And so I was surprised at the amount of respect that he gave Max at that time, because he didn't have to, in all honesty. But again, I mean, yeah, it was great. I loved the whole thing. I thought Verstappen was absolutely, in his stints, was absolutely fearless. Like it was great to watch. It was a lot of fun. And like the commentators who were doing the commentating on the NLS broadcast on YouTube was great. Those guys were really into it, very knowledgeable. It was great. I loved the whole thing. I would go back and rewatch it. And yeah, I thought Verstappen he was absolutely incredible.
He was, but there were a lot of cars sub 8 minutes in qualifying. It was so competitive. I think it is a credit also to the field to see how competitive it is. It is what I am most impressed with Verstappen is his ability. He's very agile in his racing, his ability to deal with traffic. And that's something he's never really had to do. So this must come naturally. It's not something he has taught himself or he has learned along the way. Mm-hmm. But when you speak about the respect him, the fact that he jumped through all the hoops that the German organizers have for all drivers to get 100%. The permit to race there. Yeah. I think this field understands that Verstappen identifies himself more with them than he does with F1 and probably ever has. Because they are all racing purists.
Yes.
Right. I for the life of me, when a driver, I'm going to single one out, and that's very unfair, but Zhou Guanyu, who has lost his drive in F1, and he's not alone in this. he clings on to a chance to get back into F1. Well, my co-commentator Melwer and I, we have said to him, but you're a Ferrari driver last year, Ferrari third driver. You could do Le Mans with Ferrari.
Yeah.
And it was like, now
well,
it's
look
F1
what
for me.
Giovinazzi's done, right?
Exactly, but Giovinazzi is a different. Exactly, but for us, we would, and probably Tim, you're the same. You've had a career in F1. Okay, I've lost out in the shuffle. I could do Indy. I could do Le Mans. I want to go to what is it? Bathurst.
100%.
I want to. Verstappen is for sure doing the Bathurst race one time.
I'd love to.
I am for certain he's going to do it because he loves racing. There are F1 lovers and there are racing lovers.
Yeah.
And Verstappen is definitely one of the latter.
Yeah, that's a great point. So I know we're going over here, guys. Sorry, but this is great conversation because no, look, I think it's awesome that what Max is doing. I love to see that. I mean, we saw like Nigel Mansell and other drivers do that in the past, right? Go and race in like IndyCar and do other things. And so I think
Hülkenberg won Le Mans as an active F1 driver.
Yeah,
great for him.
Yeah, it was amazing. I remember because I think it was Montreal that was the next race up after the 24 Hours of Le Mans. And I remember him coming there as a 24 Hours of Le Mans champion. And I spoke with him about it. But anyways, I digress. So Nelson made a good point when, you talk about Verstappen respecting the series and respecting the hoops that he had to sort of jump through to be able to, to race properly at the Nordschleife. And I think it was something I was sitting on the couch watching the race with Jasmine and like she was asking me questions about it. And I was just saying like, it's interesting because it's like to see what Max actually had to do to go and do that. I mean, following another driver around the track for a full day just to get a certification that says that you can go and do that. And you're a 4-time Formula One world champion having to do that. I mean, and he did it without complaining. There was no complaining about it. There was no back talk about it. There was no what if, hey, can you guys bend the rules for me? There was no nothing. He did everything that organization asked him to do, never complained about it once. And yeah, I got a lot of respect for that. Big time. A series I would love to see him race in is IndyCar. And
that's the one he isn't.
I would love to see Max go to Indy. I mean, it's probably something he's not really interested in. And like, I know that probably like ovals and like road courses, street courses, a mix of all these different things may not be something he's totally stoked about, but I would love to see him go to IndyCar one day, maybe when he's done with Formula One. That would be something I would love to see that.
I don't think that is happening, but...
And Nelson, you're saying not going to happen.
No, because...
I agree with Nelson, though. I don't think it's something...
I'd love to see it as well, but I think he's fearful of ovals. Just like he will never set foot behind the wheel of a rally car. It's just not for him. He's very clear on what he likes and what he doesn't like. But I will say, and this is a discussion I have with a lot of people, F1 and the top of endurance racing, that's not a step down. That's a step sideways. It's a different part of our sport. It's not a lower level. And I think yesterday showed that. And credit to him. I think he has changed the narrative with non-Dutch fans last year with his step into doing this and him tackling the Nordschleife for 24 hours, which I'm commentating on. It will only enhance that. I think people understand him better for it, and that's good for him.
Okay. Well, gentlemen, I want to say I always love our conversations. Nelson, you when you come on the show, not only do Tim and I love it, but so do the listeners. So we love having you on. We're gonna steal as much of your time this year and every year going forward as we possibly can. But just to know how much we appreciate having you on. And Tim, we got a race this week, my friend, and then it's a month off. What are we gonna do? I'm a little bit.
Watch NLS. Watch NLS.
I guess so. You know what? The three of us are just going to have to do recaps of those. But appreciate you both, and you know what? We'll get ready for Japan and enjoy. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thanks, Adam. Thanks, Nelson.
Cheers.